This is the space planning toolset. I'm not going to talk about all of these tools. I'm just going to talk about this one, the space object or the space tool. Spaces in Vectorworks can be used to create a conceptual model. You can create areas, polygons, rectangles. You can use this tool here to flood a series of closed lines or walls, or anything that's a closed shape you can use with this. You can set different 3D heights for the objects, you can set different colors for the objects, so you can make quite a nice little two-dimensional conceptual plan, but it can also have three-dimensional volume as well. You do need to set the preferences correctly. Click on the Preferences button, and here are all the space settings. Now there are quite a few and you need to work through them. For example, numbering is going to have a start value of 1 and an incremental value of 1. This will allow you to create space after space where the numbers are sequential. We can have occupancy things. I'm not going to worry about occupancy for this. 2D boundaries. If you forget to turn this on, of course you can't see your space. 3D. This is really important. I've had a couple of clients who have got stuck on this. They forget to tick the show 3D and then they complain that there's no 3D object. You have to click that. You also might want to be careful of this. Setting the net ceiling layer to layer delta Z might result in a 0 height to that object. So you might want to turn both of those off so that you can just have a 3D volume, set the net here, and not worry about the gross. So just using the net. Space labels. We can have lots of different space tags. A one line, a residential, compact. This one here has the room finishes, which may be a bit early to think about that. So I'm just going to use the simple one. 2D attributes. So we can set the class. We can even create new classes for our spaces. And it's a good idea to get into the habit of creating classes for these objects. So you can turn spaces on and off. You can turn the additional data, the text, the labels, turn the text on and off as well. That's really useful. Here we have a class for the label, and here we have a class for the rectangle or the polygon of the space object. We could have a different class for the 3D, and we could even put a texture on it if we wanted to. So there's quite a lot of things you can do with a space object, but I think that's enough. So let's go OK. So if I use the rectangular mode, click to start, click to finish, there's my first space. Let's create another one and another one. You should notice the numbers are sequential. If we change to a 3D view, you can see they've all got height, and you can have different heights on different space objects. So you could have some at 8 feet, some at 10 feet high, and so on. You can't drag the space up and down. You have to use the object info palette to change the space height. 2 meters high. Now that we have the 3D parts of our spaces, if we render it, you'll see that they're all in the sort of white color. If I change the color of one of these objects, let's say for example we'll make this a purpley color, you might notice that it doesn't change in the 3D view, but in plain view it's picked up the 2D color. So there's actually a different color between 2D and 3D. If we go to the settings, you'll find there's a different 3D attributes, and we can change the color in 3D to a completely different color than we have in 2D. So it's probably a good idea to keep the colors similar, but they don't have to be. Another way to create spaces is to draw the polygons of the rooms that you want, and then use your right click and create objects from polyline if you've added it there, or modify objects from polyline. Now when you go and create a space using this method, it probably pays you to open this to show the properties dialog box, but even better, before you start, make sure you select your space object, go through the settings and get the settings the way you want. So for example, I want the space label to be on space spec, and I want the 2D attributes to be on space main and the 3D attributes to be on space main as well. Now the numbering might just go out of sync because we've got the next value here at 1. So let's just go through it and we'll try it. Now before I leave the space tool, this paint bucket entry mode only works with walls, so it will not work if you just got a series of lines. So you don't need to select the space, but you do need to go through your settings. Then you should be able to click it, do the right click if you've added this, objects from polyline to your right click to your contextual menu. So space, I'm going to try it without the show properties. Let's see what happens. Puts the number 1 on. Okay, let's do it again. I'm going to show the properties this time. So settings, space number. You notice the next value has come up at 1, so we have to make that 2, and it's gone back to 1, which is a bit of a pain. So you're going to have to go back to manual and make that number 2. So right click or modify and objects from polyline. Let's just turn that off. That's number 1, so you're going to have to change this to manual, and that's space number 3, and so on. So that's how you can use polygons that you've already created to then create the space objects. Now the space objects should be being created with a height. So let me just scroll down and check. So there's my height there. Now do be aware that these are not sitting on the site. The Z value is not yet on top of the site. You would have to go to AEC, terrain, and send to surface to get that volume to sit up on top of the site. Now when you do that, of course, it sits the center of the space to that level of the site, which may be wrong. So let's make these last two into space objects. So objects from polyline. I'm going to do some settings here and manual. Okay, so they've come up like that. So this is space number 3, no, this should be number 4, and this will be space number 5. Now if I send space number 5 to the surface, the center of this will be sent to the surface of my site model. That's that point there, which means that there'll have to be a cut in the site to get that point. Well, you'd have to cut the site out because the site slopes up that way. So let's send that to the surface. And there's my height. And then you'll have to apply that height to the other space objects. Once you've created your spaces, you can start to edit them. So first of all, you could change their color. Easy enough. Remember, that doesn't change the color in 3D. So you still, if you go to the 3D view and render that, you'll find that that color is not in 3D. So you have to go to settings and change the 3D attributes for the same color. Just check where these are. That one's still on the ground. This one's on the ground. This one's been lifted up to a higher level. So if you copy that height, you can paste that on all these other ones. So unless you want a change in level of all these spaces, copy the same height to all of them. So what other choices have we got for editing spaces? Well, if we create a shape, select your space and the shape, right click and add surface, it adds that shape to the surface of your space object. In fact, it adds it in 3D. If you double click on a space, you can change it, provided you got that mode. You can reshape that object. So we could reshape it there, we could change its shape over here, but now of course it doesn't connect to this other shape, so we need to make sure that it does. So moving that to that end point and this into here, so you can reshape them that way. You can clip surface. You should be able to use the clip tool as well to clip a small portion out. Add surface, clip surface, the clip tool, the split tool will affect these. Just not sure how it's going to do it. Just be careful you don't select everything. You notice what it's done, it's thrown away that part of the space. So you can use the split tool on it. You can add surface, clip surface, use the clip tool. So there's a lot of editing you can do to a space, so you can change these spaces to the shapes you want.